Welcome back, Math 8. This is Mrs. Koontz. Today we are going to work on a couple of different things. We're going to start with recalling what we talked about with our tables. I want you to go ahead and make sure you have a writing utensil and a piece of paper. Graph paper would be best, but if you don't have that, that's totally fine. A regular piece of paper will be fine. Below, you're going to see this table. I want you to show the pattern. Remember how we did that in class? Make sure you show all your work for this table, and then you're going to define that slope. Go ahead and try that right now. Okay, so let's just jump right in here. We have 11 going to 9. Remember when we are counting down, so when our numbers are getting smaller, we're going to say we're subtracting a number. So how much is it from 11 to 9? Minus 2. And then from 9 to 5 is how much? Minus 4. And then from 5 to 3 is another minus 2. How about from negative 6 to negative 3? When we're looking at those negative numbers, the bigger the actual number, the smaller the number means. So if it's a negative and it has a big number, it's a huge negative, which means it's a super tiny number. So if we're going to be getting bigger, going from negative 6 to negative 3, our numbers are getting bigger. So we're going to be saying plus. So our numbers are going to be positive. So how much is it from 6 to 3? Well, that is going to be plus 3. And from negative 3 to 3, that's going to be plus 6. And then from 3 to 6 is going to be another plus 3. How do we show the slope for this? So typically we've got our rise over run or our delta y over delta x. Remember that represents our change in y over our change in x. So let's look at our y's first. We've got y here, and here's our changes. Now these don't look very consistent right now, but let's write these as a fraction in comparison to their matching fractions with x. Okay, so we've got a positive 3 over a negative 2. And we've got a positive 6 over a negative 4. Now, what do these two fractions have in common? Go ahead and take a second and see if you can notice anything about these two fractions that might make sense to you on why these fractions are okay. So if you came up with, if you multiply 3 times 2, you get 6, and negative 2 times 2 equals negative 4, or 6 divided by 2 is 3, and negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, you will see that these two fractions are equivalent. And when we're talking about slope, we always want a fraction. That is ideal. Fractions will make our slope so much easier. Now, we have this negative here in our denominator, right? We can leave that negative with our denominator. But how do we typically write a fraction that is negative? We're going to pull that negative out front. Our change in y over our change in x. So our slope is negative 3 over 2. Okay? All right, let's move forward. Our opportunity to learn for today is I can graph from slope-intercept form and examine differences by recalling parts of slope-intercept form and doing a scavenger hunt. Our actions to take, we're going to recall parts of slope-intercept form, and then we're going to practice graphing y equals mx plus b, and then we're going to really quickly have an amazingly fun scavenger hunt. Down here we've got two different equations. we've got equation A, which is y equals 1/4 x minus 1. And then we've got equation B, which is y equals negative x plus 2. So I'm going to show you how to do equation A. Then I want you to try equation B. So when we're looking at equation A, we're trying to find out what the slope is. To find the slope, we really should look at rise over run first. So what is our rise? And then what is our run? So when I say the words rise over run, you should think of a fraction. Rise would be the top number, or the numerator, and run would be our denominator. So when you hear what is the rise and what is the run, that means I'm asking you, what is the numerator? That is a terrible one, I'm sorry. 1. And what is the numerator? And the denominator is 4. So our overall slope is that m term. Remember, we're looking at y equals mx plus b. So what is that term right there in front of our x? Well, our rise over run is another name for slope. So now we know our slope is 1/4. Okay, so keep in mind that if there was a negative sign out front here, we'd want to make sure that this was a negative 1/4. Our y-intercept is another term for b. B is our y-intercept. In this equation, our y-intercept is a -1. Make sure you keep those terms or those signs with their terms. So our y-intercept is -1. Now, we've talked about this a little bit in class. How do you write the beginning point? If our y-intercept is -1, our b tells us where on the y-axis we need to start. But if we actually go and plot that b, we have an x value and a y value. What is the x value? Well, let's look at it. If we go to y, -1, and we put a point there, what is the x value of that point? The x value of that point is 0. Our y value is -1, and that's the end. That is our beginning point. So now I can graph this line. I need to make sure that I have at least 3 points. So I know I'm going to rise up 1, and then I'm going to run another 4. Both of these numbers are positive, so I'm going to make sure that I keep going in the positive direction. However, how else can you make a positive? A positive and a positive is a positive, but what about a negative multiplied or divided by a negative? That is also a positive. So I can go -1, but then also -4 on our x-axis. Make that a little bit bigger. There we go. So now I have a line. I have 3 points that look like they're in a line. If I were to actually draw a line here, so here we've got a line. Put my arrows at the ends. Because our lines continue, you can see that even though my line's not perfect, it goes through all 3 of those points. Okay, I want you to go ahead and try the y minus x plus 2 and give it a shot for yourself. So this is what your second line for equation B should look like. Now, if this were a test or anything that we were doing in class, we would also ask you to do what? You have two lines on this graph. If you were using just a pencil or a pen, one color of ink, how would you know which line is which? We need to make sure that we label our lines. So here's our line A, here's our line B. It's really easy to know what to name them because they were kind of already named for us up here. All right? So let's move forward into today's activity. Alrighty, so here's what we're going to do today. What you're going to do, we have 10 slope-intercept equations. There are also 10 graphs. What you need to do is graph an equation, find the matching graph, and then graph that next equation that's with the new graph. Okay? So start with whichever one you want. Write down that equation. Really try and get that graphed out. Once you have an answer, you're going to go back, find the matching graph in those 10 graphs, write down the new equation that's right above that matching graph, and you're going to start all the way back over at step 1. Okay? Okay, so here's all 10 of those equations. Make sure that you understand this equation does not match this graph. You have to go graph this equation, this y equals 4, and find the matching graph. Let's say this down here is the matching graph for y equals 4. Now you're going to graph this equation. Now you need to find the graph that matches this equation. So you've only finished one graph. You have to continue going through until you have all of them. Go ahead and give that a shot. Take as much time as you need. All right, last but not least, our final activity for the day. We've talked a lot about how we do work ethic grades, and we've decided how we want student input on each of your own work ethic grades. So what I want you to do today is rate and justify your work ethic. What I mean by justify is don't just say, I got an A. You need to tell me I got an A because I did these things and I couldn't possibly have done any better. Or could you have done something better? Or how engaged were you in the activity? And I want you to not only look at today, but go all the way back to the very beginning of just this quarter, just quarter 2. So after we got back from fall break, how have you been working? What is your work ethic? What do you deserve for that grade? Okay? Make sure you justify that. Really dig deep and tell me what you think you deserve. All right? Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, you know how to email all of your teachers. Have a fabulous rest of your day, and I will see you next time.